This is the Bryan Hyde Show.
Well, hello there and welcome to the show. We made it to another Tuesday, although we had a little bit of a holiday this week, and it looks like everybody came through okay. My friend Eric Peters joins me as he does each Tuesday. And Eric, first of all, how was your Memorial Day?
Oh, busy. I've just been doing some piddling on the Trans Am to try to keep myself sane, fixing little things here and there that have nothing to do with the transmission. I've been trying to figure out how to get my little electric defroster switch to work. It hasn't worked in a long time. And the cigarette lighter, all important, cigarette lighter. Not that I smoke, but I just want to be able to push it in and have it pop out, like it did back in the day.
Now that you mention it, I just had this sudden realization of how long it's been since I've seen ashtrays in a car.
Not for years.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Some vehicles offer what they call a smoker's package. You pay extra and they give you an ashtray.
Wow. But in the meantime, we've got cup holders to put our coins and other various things into as we travel. I'll admit, I kind of disconnected from the news this weekend. We had a wedding to go to. We, were visiting family members' graves and so forth. So I didn't spend as much time online. Did I miss anything? Did world peace break out?
Apparently not. The news overnight. And the outrageousness of it has gotten to be just so. What's the right word? It's like defeatingly overwhelming. So they are framing the latest round of attacks on the Iranians as self-defense. And, it seems to me that that's something kind of like when the cop is beating the crap out of you and screaming, "Stop resisting."
Yeah, it's gaslighting in its simplest form. And, you had mentioned this off the air and some people will probably take exception that we even point this out, but no matter where you stand on the Iranian leadership, they would be so stupid to take anything the Trump administration says at face value. Look, we're going to negotiate in good faith. And they tried that before. And I think, wasn't there a bunch of surprise attacks, decapitation strikes, and, most of their leadership was killed?
Yeah, absolutely. That's consequential. And I'm glad you brought it up. And irrespective of how you feel about the war per se, Trump has shredded the credibility of the United States in a perhaps irrecoverable way, at least as long as he's the person that's in charge of the federal government, because you'd have to be an imbecile to trust anything that man says. So how then do you broker a deal with a person like that? Would you buy a used car from this man? Of course you wouldn't. So, I think the Iranians are not stupid and they recognize that they have been played and they're not interested in being played again. And so where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us where we are, with Trump blustering, making these braggadocious public utterances that are disconnected from reality quite often. He makes claims that are simply false on their face. And the Iranians sit by and say, well, okay, fine. Here we are. And what are you going to do about it? And I think we're in a checkmate situation. We, meaning the United States and Israel, because on the one hand, the prestige of both has been shattered, and on the other, as far as the Israelis are concerned, they are now in this position that they didn't want to be in, with Iran stronger than it was before the war. So what are they going to do? Are they going to do the unspeakable thing, the thing that's on all of our minds that we all dread? That would mean a catastrophe for the world. I don't think the chances of that have lessened. If anything, I think they've increased. The same, by the way, with regard to what's going on over in Kyiv, which is now off of most people's radar, but probably ought to be back on it.
Yeah, some of the biggest and most pointed attacks by the Russians. And like going after the decision-making centers, which, look, I'm not going to try and see if I can spin this, a little bit in our favor here. There's a lot of Western advisors, including U.S. military advisors, that have been running this proxy war against Russia in Kyiv. Good heavens, they're being warned. Russia is warning the U.S. and other Western countries, you need to get your people out, because those places are going to be destroyed. Now, we do have the consolation, though, that at least last week, a good, strong, pro-Israel congressman was elected in the Kentucky primary, and that scamp, Thomas Massie, will be sent packing, come the first of the year.
Well, I think there actually is a silver lining to that very dark cloud, which is that Massie is free now. He's not encumbered by the GOP. He can speak his mind even more plainly. And he still has, 7 months as a sitting congressman to do things that could be very consequential, such as, reveal more about what the Epstein files contain, among other things, and simply serve as an embarrassment to the Trump administration, which ought to be embarrassed. Because what it's done is simply outrageous and despicable, and people are rightly enraged and demoralized about it. That we apparently somehow the federal government can't do anything about a massive potential pedophile ring and blackmail ring. Oh, look over there, a squirrel. Let's worry about the Iranians. This is something that you don't have to be like a master geopolitician to grasp. It is something that strikes at the very heart of the country's identity as a sort of decent thing, a sort of decent entity, because there's nothing more indecent than what's been going on with regard to that. And somehow we're all just supposed to forget about it. And they'll do anything to make us forget about it, including start another war.
Yeah, I watched a video. In fact, I'm going to send this to you when I send you the links for today's show. I don't remember the name of the individual who put this together. It's just a little 2-minute, he calls it propaganda, but he says, become the propaganda you want to see online. But he takes some of the things that Massie has said and points, I think, credibly to the possibility of Massie actually becoming the head of a political movement of, we're talking younger voters, people who refuse to be duped by the great golem of golden, or anyway, I forget how James Howard Kunstler called him, but
golden golem of greatness, I think.
That's it.
Yeah.
So our president at the moment, I think, has lost a lot of people, at least those who are paying attention and who didn't he run on, he wasn't going to start new wars? Didn't he run on, we're going to expose these pedophiles and so forth? Didn't he run on cutting this illicit spending and wasteful, fraudulent use of taxpayer money? And none of that stuff is happening. And Massie now, as you mentioned, is unchained from, the whatever pressures, the GOP could put on him. And I think there's a very real possibility he may be starting up another movement with some potential to upend, the MAGA, stubborn holdouts.
Well, I'd like to think so. I'd certainly like to see it. Trump has always been kind of incoherent. He's certainly unprincipled. Massie is neither of those things. Massie is very coherent. He can speak intelligibly about the issues. And he appears to have principles, which is a very, very rare commodity. A very important thing. I think the reason MAGA has gone off the rails is because Trump never had any principles, at least none that he wasn't willing to completely change at the drop of a hat whenever it became situationally convenient.
Yep.
And I think a lot of the people who supported them, I'll raise my hands, guilty, hoped that perhaps, he would just generally track with, in a vague sort of way, that America first, make America great kind of a thing. But it was never really articulated, was it, what that meant? And now we're finding out what Trump thinks it means. And there's a very, very important difference there. Massie, on the other hand, has been very clear about what he thinks would make America great. He's articulated principles, and I think that he would stick by them. And I think that has tremendous appeal. And it would be a good thing. He seems to be principled. And more importantly, he seems to have a quality, and I hope I'm not wrong about this, of empathy and civility and just common decency.
Yep.
He doesn't strike me as a bad man. Trump strikes me as a bad man.
The only concern that I have, and this is not reason for Massie to tuck tail and run, is that if he starts to gain traction, we're probably going to see him get Charlie Kirked.
Oh, I agree. Everybody understands that too. Isn't that sad? Isn't that a commentary on the state of affairs in this country? I mean, I guess on the other hand, it's good to know what you're dealing with and what you're facing. And there is absolute truth in that. But at the same time, it's horrifying to understand that anybody who actually would put the country first and has a set of principles that they're willing to stand for is going to go the way of Charlie Kirk or John F. Kennedy. And we all understand that now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I'm intrigued by the possibility of someone picking up that torch of liberty that has been dropped, and as the Trumpsters have marched on, and I'm not ashamed to say, I voted for him a couple of times because I felt he was the better option, but I didn't abandon him; he abandoned me, and that's okay. Let him move on. I'm looking for the people who are principled, and whether that's Massie or somebody else, I want principle over the politician who'll do anything to get elected or say anything to get elected, and then, take whatever money he needs, however it gets to him, to stay in power.
Well, ultimately, it's on us. And I think that that's an important realization. We have the power. Let's take it back. No longer comply with this. No longer give it our legitimacy. I feel the percolating upward in this country is, for the first time in my life, a general sense that we've got to start resisting. And I'm not talking about violent resisting. I'm talking about noncompliance, just refusing to be a part of this garbage any longer. And playing the dumb game that we're presented with every 2 and 4 years. I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote because my vote counts. No, it doesn't. Understand that, and pull the legitimacy away from the system. That's how we change the system, not by giving it new legitimacy every 2 or 4 years.
No, I'm with you there. And look, I say this as someone who is actually running for public office for the first time in my life. The greatest truth that any person out there, particularly voters, can get their minds around is that no one is coming to save you, especially your favorite political party. It's not going to happen. Yep. So get started on what you want to get started on. And, as you say, delegitimize it, make it obsolete. Have the option of saying, no, thank you. Or if you need, hell no, I don't want your help when, someone in a political position offers to save you from whatever, crisis they're pushing at the moment.
Yeah, mental exercises are helpful too. Here's one. We reflexively refer to this country as the United States. Well, I think the term is inaccurate. We live in the United State, singular, and have ever since 1865, which was when that issue was decided. Originally the colonies were independent states, plural. They actually were dealt with as sovereign entities by the government of Great Britain during the peace treaty negotiations. And it was accepted that the states were sovereign all the way up to 1861. And then after 1865, we had this consolidated Leviathan, which we stupidly, in my opinion, refer to as the United States. It is a united state. It is a centralized authoritarian system. And this is an example of getting our heads straight and understanding reality by using words correctly, not allowing them to define our reality for us by using words incorrectly.
Yeah, like when politicians say, well, our democracy demands that we do this, and our democracy needs this. And again, it's a neat sounding word, and it's supposed to give us warm fuzzies, but this nation was never founded as a democracy. And under the
Correct.
Constitution, even the states themselves were to be in a republic form of government.
That's right. And even today in the news, this idea that what happened last night was an act of self-defense. I mean, and the media parrots this. They report this. Whatever happened to copy editors and editors? Wait a minute. No, we attacked them. They didn't come here and we're defending ourselves against an assault. We decided to assault them. It matters. This sort of thing should not pass. We really should call it out and say, no, we decided to attack them again. They defended themselves. And yet this reality has been inverted, and it remains inverted so long as we don't correct it in our heads.
Yeah, and that's it takes a little bit of effort to learn to see through the language haze that's thrown up to obscure the meaning of things. But you throw somebody down on the ground as you're beating the crap out of them. You don't explain. I assisted him to the ground for his safety and mine.
Right.
Okay. There's some mental gymnastics going on there that I just don't want to play along with.
This stuff was kind of funny back in the 90s, I guess, when the politically correct stuff really began to take hold, because it was absurd and ridiculous and we laughed at it. It's not funny anymore because it's completely saturated the conversation, such that you almost can't talk about anything any longer without stopping and saying, wait a minute, what did you mean by that word? R. Emmett Terrell, who is the editor of the American Spectator, which I contribute to sometimes, I had a very good observation years and years ago. He talked about the culture smog, and that's what he meant by that. The way language has been polluted, so honest conversation is made very difficult. We have to wrest that back and go back to using plain, direct, honest language and agree on what words mean instead of allowing words to be defined for us by other people.
So let's talk about something. Let's have a little bit of laughter here.
Yes.
Looking at your article, the fakest, gayest Mercedes ever.
Yeah, it's a new high, low water mark, however you want to put it. So it's their latest exotic hypercar, and it's electric, of course, and it has something like 1,053 horsepower, and it gets to 60 in 2 something seconds. Fine, spectacular. But the reason that I went after it and called it fake and gay is because it has fake V8 engine sounds, and it has fake transmission shifting through the gears sounds. which is pathetic and sad, isn't it? If you're going to sell an EV, why not own it and sell it for what it is instead of something inauthentic, something fake, something that, kind of pathetically says, yeah, we understand that the sound of a V8 and the sound of shifting really was superior to the sound of nothingness in an EV. When we get that, it's pathetic. I mean, you and I were talking a little bit off the air. It would be something kind of like if you bought a new Mustang GT with a V8 and it had the sounds of a horse whinnying.
Yes.
Bring you back to the good old days of the horse and buggy. I mean, obviously nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear a horse and, the sounds of giddy up, because the sound of the engine is what you're hearing and it's authentic and real and people like that. Well, okay, so let the EV stand on its merits instead of pathetically trying to be something that it isn't.
It evokes a memory from my childhood. Maybe you did this as well. The old playing card and clothespin and your bicycle spokes.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So it sounds like a motorcycle as I'm riding along,
Yeah, and we were kids. We weren't old enough to get a motorcycle then. So what we were doing basically was going, wow, I can't wait till I'm old enough to be able to get one of those things. Now you've got grown adults who will spend $200,000 on an electric car that tries pathetically and desperately to mimic the sounds of an engine that isn't there and a transmission that's not there.
And that's the kicker to me. Even as kids, we knew we were pretending. What does it say of adults who are willing to suspend that disbelief for the sake of, look, I'm pretending like this is a supercar with a gas engine?
Yeah, I think these high-end brands like Mercedes, I don't think they get it. I have been trying to get them to understand it for a long time. But the exclusivity, when you're in a position to spend a lot of money on a car, you want something special. You want something different. So I'd like for somebody to explain to me what makes a Mercedes EV different from a Hyundai EV. They have motors and batteries, right?
Yep.
One motor, one battery pack, maybe it's a little bigger and it stores a little more electricity. But at the end of the day, it's a battery. You can't make a battery have character. It's basically inert. There are chemical reactions that are going on inside the battery. You can't see it. You can't hear it. It's a black box. I mean, a motor, it spins. Whoop-de-doo. There are bigger motors and smaller motors. They spin. That's what they do. Whereas if you think about the character that used to come with special cars, you got a Porsche 911 with that wonderful air-cooled flat six they don't make anymore. And it had this kind of like, unique sound that nothing else made that was like that. You had V12s, you had V8s, and they all had distinctive character. One of the things I love about my Trans Am is that Hurst shifter that it's got and the Super T10 manual that has a very specific feel and sound that's not like other transmissions. And that's what attaches you to it. That's what makes you want to have it. This thing, it's like the best way I can come up with to explain it, it's kind of like getting the latest iPhone. I mean, okay, so in the moment you buy it, it's got the greatest camera, it has this, it has that. But by next year, somebody's got a better camera, it has more memory. So all of a sudden your fancy new iPhone that's just an old crap phone, throw it away, get another. Right. I mean, there's nothing there at all, other than the very ephemeral newness of it and the expense of it.
I'm still surprised somebody hasn't come up with an EV that makes the sound of like the Jetsons vehicles that they would fly around in. Oh, are you kidding?
No, and Mercedes makes it. I drove one a few years ago. It was the EQS, if I'm remembering correctly. And as I got in it, I pushed the accelerator pedal. There's no gas pedal, obviously, to the floor, and it goes. No kidding.
Son of a gun, man.
And it's entirely artificial. I wouldn't complain about it if that was, if the electric motor made that sound. Okay, that's the sound. That you like it or you don't like it. It's authentic, at least.
Yeah,
it's real. I feel like they're trying to reduce us all to the level of a not particularly bright 8-year-old, who's amused by really simple-minded things. It's insulting, I think, to anybody who actually has grown up and is tired of like juvenile fake things.
I got to give a shout out to my friend Tyler. He was telling me about he drives an old Crown Vic that he's restored, and I mean it's a nice car. But something he said that just resonated with me is he said, "I feel this sense of rebellion every time I turn the key and I go somewhere in that car. I feel like I am rebelling against the people who want me to be that little not so bright 8-year-old who's ooh clapping my hands at the newest, gayest thing that Mercedes has come out with. I identify with it. You and your Transit. I've got my Tahoe. It's not a beautiful car. It's something I don't mind getting dirty or scratched or whatever, but it's a V8, and there's something about that makes me feel, well, like I'm a bit of a rebel. Alone.
And even I'm glad you brought this up, because even to the extent of turning the ignition key to start the engine, which is something you don't do any longer in cars, you push a button, which they marketed as a convenience. And I understand some people like that, but there's something alienating to me and something disconnected. You're increasingly not part of the experience. Whereas when you put that key in the ignition switch and you physically turn it and you're controlling the starter motor, it turns as long as you turn that thing and you start the engine, you're connected to the vehicle in a way that you're just not when you sit there and push a button, and that triggers a sequence of events that starts the car.
Yep. I wonder as we move forward, what other things we're going to have to seize onto to maintain that sense of freedom. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, by the way. I'm thinking it's actually a good thing, but how sad that we have to do it.
It's how we win. It's simply saying, no, I don't want to be a part of this. I think we spoke last week about, the Subaru that I was test driving that had this, the AI eyesight monitor in it. And I like Subarus. I think they're fine cars, but I would not buy that car. And I think if a lot of people say, you know what, I liked your cars, but I don't like that. I don't like particularly that you're trying to make me have this. If you want to make it optional for people who want it, great, let them buy it. But don't push me into this. I'm not going to take it. And if it means I have to drive an older car, fine, so be it. I'm happy to drive an older car. And that, it goes across the spectrum. Just don't deal with this. Refuse to be pushed into it for the sake of some momentary convenience, or because you think, well, it's inevitable, I've just got to go along with it.
Hear, hear. Well, see, Eric, this is why I love to have these weekly conversations with you. I come away feeling energized, and my backbone is sturdy now, and I'm ready to go forward and claim my liberty in spite of those people who think that it's a dangerous thing and I shouldn't have it. Anyway,
good stuff, and it works for me on my end also.
Thank you so much for being my guest. I look forward to talking with you again next week.
Good stuff, Bryan. Thank you.
This is the Bryan Hyde Show.